Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Solio Analytics podcast. This is Pras, and Gameweek 1 is finally here. This is our Gameweek 1 preview pod, and I'm joined as usual by Jonny. Jonny, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks. Bit tired, but yeah, not long to go now. Start locking things in, and the relief when the deadline passes and everything is locked in, and there's not much you can do. Well, I say relief now. Some people are kind of panicking that they've done the wrong thing, but yeah, I'm excited to get started. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And I was going to say there's a relief of the deadline, but there's actually another relief from last week where Solio launched publicly. We did the really cool video with James and yourself. And how's that been? Like the whole week of opening up your darling, your baby to the world. How's that been as an experience?
Yeah, it's been heartwarming in some ways. I think some of the positive comments have been lovely. Obviously, there's new features we've been trying to release in the last week as well, and a few bugs and fixes and all the teething problems you have with any new product. But yeah, I think it's gone better than any of us could have imagined. So yes, very excited to have started that journey. Plenty more to come, but feeling good. Yeah.
Yeah, the number of people that have come to me saying, the tool looks fantastic. The projections tab has been a super hit. People are using the projections tab to actually really think analytically, plan their paths. So that's exactly what we wanted to do with Solio Analytics, where people do think a little bit beyond Game Week 1, Game Week 2. And I think that has been really useful. People have been using it to compare players, just looking at projections, changing their beliefs. I will come to one of the examples that I've used in my draft where I changed a player's belief to get to an answer. So I think all of that has been great. So thank you to you, to the broader team for bringing this, and hopefully it continues to be a success. And if you are new to this and if you're listening to this for the first time, you can head over to fpl.solioanalytics.com. You can enter your team ID and basically get started. And if you need help, go to our previous videos on how to navigate the tool.
Yeah, I'd encourage people to get involved in the Discord server as well. We're very responsive there. Best place to reach us. There's a link to it from the intro tour on the site, but yeah, best place to get us.
Nice. Over to Game Week 1 then. We have obviously a few graphics, and here is the premiere for the very famous RobT graphic. Everyone who's followed RobT or us on Twitter knows this. This is the Game Week 1 projected goals and clean sheet odds. Feels very real looking at this slide. That was my first reaction when Rob shared it with us, right?
Yeah, it feels like a familiar old friend. We're back up and running with this stuff again. I would say most of it is normally shared with SpreadX data. We've got some Pinnacle data in here as well, which tends to be a little bit sharper. And if you're not sure what we mean by that, I'll plug our pod with Rob from a couple of weeks ago talking about sharp markets.
Yeah.
So yeah, so often the market data here is kind of from SpreadX. It's rounded to the nearest sort of 0.025 of a goal, whereas we've got some much more dynamic, much more accurate 2.22s, 2.66s, all the kind of different new numbers. But yeah, I mean, there's a standout figure really, which is Liverpool's 2.66 goals. Do you think someone might be a captaincy option in that game, perhaps?
It's a Friday game as well. You know what? Like people who are thinking it's so nice to go against Salah and whatever. I mean, forget about models. There's a intangible element of playing FPL as well. The first kickoff Friday night, and Salah has the highest, or Liverpool have the highest number of expected goals per 90 or expected goals for the game. And yeah, I mean, we'll talk about big hitters in general, but if we're starting with Liverpool, there was a few learnings, or maybe not, from the Community Shield loss. What did you reckon? We learned from that game. Salah was too wide, or do we not believe in that?
I mean, I remember a couple of seasons ago when it was Darwin, Núñez, and Haaland had both just signed for Liverpool and City, and they were the two teams playing. And Haaland missed a few chances, and I'm sure Darwin got a goal or two. Which fortunes were reversed come the real season. So sometimes it's more just who's actually getting the right positions. But yeah, Salah's often looks quite wide, but he always gets involved. He did miss his penalty in the shootout, which is probably more worrying.
Yeah.
But I think we've kind of known he's possibly not Liverpool's best penalty taker for a little while, but that doesn't mean he's not taking them.
The penalty taker.
But yeah, small worry there. I think as well. So they weren't playing Gravenberch. I know he is suspended in Game Week 1 anyway. But it was quite an attacking midfield, sort of an equivalent of a double pivot of Curtis Jones and Szoboszlai. Was
Yeah.
not exactly what I was thinking when the lineup came out, but I suppose also, there's a trophy on the line, but it is a pre-season game, so it's let's try this out. So yeah, I'm kind of more worried about Liverpool's defence than I am about their attack. I'm sure I saw an article that basically said something along the lines of, it doesn't look like Liverpool's attack haven't played very much together yet, but it certainly looks like their defence hasn't, even though that's true for both of them. So with new signings all round, but attack looks pretty strong, pretty good. I think I'd be happy picking up a Nekatike or a Verts or maybe Isak gets added into the mix before the deadline. Maybe he comes in a bit later. Whereas the defence is maybe Frimpong looked good, but I keep forgetting that actually Bradley is not too far away, so might become an issue further down the line. But yeah, Liverpool looked pretty good, just lost out in the end.
Yeah, I'm of the same opinion, and the fact that Bournemouth are also a team that have lost a lot of centre backs, or even Kirk is, then it just makes sense that the markets have Liverpool to score the most number of goals this weekend or this coming Friday. I think the other one to talk about before we get to each of these positions is Spurs. So it's not helping that people. Or it's not helping people to believe market data when they see Spurs as the highest clean sheet odds, but it is Burnley at home and it is a different manager. So are you surprised at how big the delta is? Like, let's compare Forest at home to Brentford versus Spurs at home to Burnley. Like, both feel good fixtures, but there's a 15% gap in the two.
Yeah, I mean, I think Brentford have lost some key attackers and might be without Wisser if he's gone or not playing. But Burnley's attack last season wasn't anything particularly special. I know they've just signed Broja, but their main forward was Zion Fleming, I think last season, who's not featured in pre-season yet. So they might be kind of without a striker. Spurs' defence is, I think a lot of their troubles last season were from missing personnel and missing players, and they've got their, Udogie might not be fully fit, but Spencer's pretty good at left back. They've got their back four, they've got their centre backs, they've got their goalkeeper. Didn't have him for all of last season. So I'm not super surprised. I think Forest's defence is actually, they overperformed a lot last season. They're good, but they're not the best defence in the league. I think Matt Sells keeping as many clean sheets as David Raya is not something we should expect to happen again. It might, and we might even expect a team that's about as good as Forest to keep up with Arsenal, but not Forest specifically, if that makes sense. So they are quite punchy on the Spurs defence, and I know quite a few people have been looking at Porro or even doubling up. But I think there's a reasonable good reason for that. But equally, I think, I don't know, I just don't see Burnley getting many goals ever. Sadly, no offence. Very much defence first in the Championship with Parker, so we'll see.
Yeah. No, any other games that jump out to you before we look at projections?
Well, I guess City's and Chelsea's goals are both quite high. They've got some easiest. I think maybe Chelsea home to Palace. I think I would have thought might have been a little bit closer. Chelsea at 2 goals and Palace just over 1. But I think, if you're looking at Chelsea assets, it's their longer term fixtures anyway. So just the fact that they're looking favourable compared to Palace at the minute. Wolves haven't looked too good. Brighton, quite a nice potential attacking fixture. I know people are looking at Rutter, especially if he's playing up front, and trying to work out who's on penalties for them is a nightmare. I think often when we don't really know who the penalty taker is, it's more because no one's taken a penalty before. We don't know who's going to take it. Whereas Welbeck's been taking them before, but they've actually got quite a few guys who were penalty takers for their old clubs or have a historic track record of taking them and do all right in the shootout. So I don't know if it's going to be De Cowper or O'Reilly or whoever. I think Gruder's taken some, Gomez has taken some. Just maybe it's Rutter. Don't know. Could be any of them.
Well, the thing against Rutter is if he plays in the 10, then he's playing with Welbeck, and Welbeck should be above him. If he's playing in the 9, then it should be O'Reilly who should be playing in the 10, and O'Reilly's pretty good at 10s as well. Yeah, so it's in either or scenario, I see him. He's still a good pick, especially if he's playing out of position, and he does get a lot of the goal share from this team, which is dying for one, then he could still be a good pick. But that's where I'm a little more bearish on him on penalties.
Yeah. Anything you think stands out? Anything popped out for you?
I mean, my beloved Man United looks like they can give a game home to Arsenal, but of course the markets expect Arsenal to win that one. But it's closer than people think. Like Man United are expected to score a goal or more than a goal. So yeah, this is, I would expect a 1-1, 2-1 kind of game. So this is not surprising.
Yeah, very good. Should we move on to the Solio projections? This is for all the players, for all 12 game weeks we've got on screen. So this is the top 20 players, I think, all positions, all prices. A familiar name up top, shall we say, with Mo Salah. But he is, sort of a cut above. Other than Palmer and Haaland, no one's within a point per game on average. Does that stand out as surprising, or is he just that good?
I mean, he's proven it last season, but I think what is surprising is the delta between him and Haaland. Now, we need to break it down in terms of, is it because of the point scoring system? Is it because we think he will continue to do what he did last year? Is it because Haaland, there is something within, Haaland's output that we are concerned about? But actually the answer is maybe just the way FPL is priced, and he gets an extra point for a goal and an extra point for a clean sheet? Or do you think there's anything more to it? Because a lot of people, after the Community Shield, rightly or wrongly, are debating, should we have Salah, should we have Haaland instead, should we have neither? And that's where the temperature has been going. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think while there's been new signings to Liverpool's attack that might, I wouldn't say unsettle Salah, but kind of redistribute the way that the attack's working. Salah's been there through thick and thin. There's a lot of good teams, but the attacks has changed quite a lot since he's been there in terms of who's been playing around, and he's been putting out pretty consistent output in all of those Liverpool attacks. So I wouldn't think there's anything specific here to think that he's going to be taking much less share, even if it's maybe an attack with more potent players than we've had before. I think what might be more of an issue is I don't know when his age curve's going to catch up with him, but he surely can't be doing this till he's into his 40s. At some point, he's going to have to need a bit of reduced minutes, but he's been a machine so far. So yeah, I think he just does well on all the metrics that you need for FPL points, whereas Haaland is goals and goals only, pretty much. I think if you look at how many touches he's getting in a game, it's single figures in a lot of games, even if he's scoring a hat-trick. Sometimes that was his 3 touches. So he does need those goals. So City's attack needs to be functioning, and it's not always functioning. They've got new pieces coming in as well. Obviously, that should be helping them, but Savio might be off to Spurs. Rodrigo might come in. It's not as settled an attack or settled as a team as well. I know Pep's all about controlling the game, and I think he's kind of lost the ability to not lost the ability, but certainly they haven't been controlling the games the way that they used to. So the attack can't function quite as well. So I think we're expecting probably more goals from Liverpool total as an attack. And Salah's not going to get as big a share of them as Haaland will for City, but he doesn't need to because he can be creative with his assists, and as long as he's keeping them on penalties, then I think that's just where it comes from as well. And I think another reason that, obviously, while he's a chunk ahead of Haaland, most of Haaland's good fixtures are coming in weeks where you can almost match him with the captaincy. Whereas, straight off the bat, game week 1, which does tend to be in full focus, even if it should only have a smaller impact than that. Salah's so far clear as the captaincy option. It doesn't mean you can't captain him, or can't captain against him, or not go without him, but the game week 1 just feels more tangible, even if you're picking a team for more than that. So to go straight in and go, I'm going to not pick the best captain in game week 1, maybe if this fixture was later and Salah's hardest game, maybe if they played Arsenal in the first game, and Haaland was the best captaincy choice, we might see a bit more of a switch, even if it's the same points total. But I think, that's usually where the differences are coming from. But again, this is at a point where we don't know everything. So it might be that in 2 game weeks' time, we're reassessing and realizing that maybe Haaland is looking a bit more secure, or Salah's had a couple of early subs, that kind of thing. So this is our, the sort of central point of our assumptions at the moment. This will change. So we need to be ready just in case I need to swap Salah to Haaland in game week well, I wouldn't say game week 2. That might be a bit too rash, but there'll be points where we need to move around, need to be able to move the funds around. So yeah, but Palmer's
Yeah.
in there as well, very strong. Anyone else
I
sticking
mean,
out at the top? You're gone, yeah.
if you look at the first three, actually the first four,
Mm-hmm.
that's where, if users of Solio Analytics, they actually look at this, they can use this as a captaincy matrix as well. So to your point, game week 1, the delta between Salah and the next best is so high that if you're going there, you're really taking a lot of risk and you're losing a lot of expected points. You can still outscore him. Of course, Salah can blank, but that's what you're taking on. If you, on the contrary, if you look at Haaland is the best captain in game week 2, but the delta isn't as high. I think the next game where Haaland's delta is really high is game week 6, where
Yeah.
there is no clear second. And this is why some people, I'm in that category where they're saying, I'll either get Haaland through transfers by then or I'll free hit in that week because I want that Haaland captaincy that week. You can flip it as well and you can say, I want to free hit in game week 4, not go Salah, close my eyes and forget that game week 1 exists. And then you can get that Salah big delta fixture again where Salah is playing Burnley. So I think that's one way to use analytics where you can essentially plan which big hitters. And that's what you have to do for the big hitters, I think. If you're getting, of course, Salah, Palmer, Haaland should be the top 3-point scorers in theory in the game over 38 weeks if everybody's injury free, but you can't have them because it's what happens to the rest of your team. So it's why Salah and Palmer are popular, and I think rightly so. We go to the next category, I think, which is where a lot of decision making is happening, which is if you have within that, JC. Within that, I think Bruno is a discussion topic because even though we are we are solely analytics, we know Bruno is high. Let's talk about him. Let's talk about him, Saka, Wirtz, and Watkins. I think these are the 4 that I think I would put in the tier 2 as the picks that could become premium picks if they do really, really well, or could be really bad as well, really disappointing. So Bruno is obviously the highest here. What is it that is making Bruno the highest? Is it the DEFCON? Is it just a package of everything?
I think just basically everything he does is in some way rewarded in fantasy points. If you're pinging hero balls forward for strikers to run onto, you're creating chances. If you're on the ball a lot, he's just involved in everything, and everything he does is either bonus related or he's making a lot more tackles than a lot of these offensive guys. So he's probably the only one in that top 10 or so who has any chance of these defensive contribution points. And as I think you were saying on the Wire podcast, basically an assist gets him bonus because he's already doing all this this baseline bonus stuff. As soon as he gets a return, he's doing that, and it's partly that I think a lot of the there's not other players at Man United who really do that. Whereas I think maybe if we looked at Kevin De Bruyne in previous seasons at Man City was doing a lot of not similar stuff to Bruno, but similar in terms of his baseline bonus was so strong that as soon as he would get a return, it's going to go up high. But there were a lot of other City players who were doing similar things, or a lot of their defence would do quite well in terms of the passing metrics. So if City kept a clean sheet, then he's competing with Guardiola and Ruben Dias and stuff for bonus, whereas Bruno's not really got the same. I know Cunha has signed now and he was doing a lot of bonus related stuff too, so that might dent him a little bit, but I think just penalties, goals, assists, he's not exceptional at any of them, but he's so good at all of them that it adds up, and he just off he goes. He's the point scoring system now is a lot similar to some of the other games that I play, where there's more rewarding for stuff that isn't goals and assists. And a frequent thing that happens with Bruno Fernandes is that he will blank with 5 or 6 points in those games because he didn't return, but he got 6 points. And we're not going to get 6 points here in the same way, but if they keep a clean sheet and he gets defensive contributions and he didn't do anything, that's 5 points without a return or any bonus. You can suddenly see how he easily gets 10 or 11 with a goal in there. And he's not going to get the defensive contributions all the time, but I can see why that puts him ahead of Florian Wirtz, who is, for all intents and purposes, probably a better player. But a lot of the stuff that he does is like ball progression stuff that is very useful for Slot and for Liverpool, but doesn't get you the points in the same way if he's carrying the ball forward from midfield and playing that pass before the assist, all those kind of things.
So
Yeah.
So on Bruno, I mean, so for people listening who want to put in their beliefs, right? So if there's somebody saying, I think he's going to play in the center midfield position, so I completely buy how Solio have modeled his CBITs
Mm-hmm.
or CBRTs or whatever it is, and
Shall
the
we call it?
bonus and the assists, all of that I buy because he will continue to do that. There's penalties, but I'm going to reduce his goal share. So what I did was I went to Solio, I went to the goal, so it's 0.31 at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
You find a number. So I'm talking to the audience here. You find a number which you think is more appropriate for his new role, where he will not play 90 minutes there, by the way. I have to say, he will take the last 20 minutes or the last 10 minutes, could be up top for Sesko, could be on the left for Cunha, but he will get minutes there. But let's say you completely believe he'll only play there, bring it down. So if you bring it down 33%, I'm just putting a number out there. Obviously, you need to do a little bit of benchmarking on other number 8s or other attacking players with penalties. Even if you bring him down to 0.19, he's still just below Wirtz, higher than Gyökeres, higher than Watkins. So I just want to put that into context that this is what Solio can help you do. If you want to put your beliefs in, don't do it and you can reset it. So don't be scared of changing it. But look at the impact of how much are you believing? Are you overcorrecting that, oh, he's going to play the center mid position, he's going to be worse than Odegaard here because that's what Odegaard does, and he doesn't get anything else. So I think that's what I would encourage people to do, and that's why I think he is a very good pick. I think I also want to talk about Saka, Jonny, a little bit. Saka looks low. Like game week 2,
Mm-hmm.
he's not the best captaincy. Why do you think that is? Is it the pen share that we've assumed Gyökeres to be a little higher?
Yeah, so I think we've split the pen share, which normally Saka. I mean, he's been giving penalties away a little bit, and he's not taken all of them, but is assumed the penalty taker. But I think the assumption, certainly within the market data, is that Gyökeres is not the penalty taker, but has a good shout for them. So until we see a penalty taken with them both on the pitch, then it's kind of shared fairly 50-50. So yeah, I think someone like that is, Arsenal again are like, their defense is the thing that they're really elite at. Their attack is very good, obviously, it has to be good enough to be challenging for the title, but they are a reasonable chunk below a team like a Liverpool or a Chelsea or a City.
Yeah.
I know their attack's still probably better than Man United's, but Saka's not getting these defensive contributions. He doesn't always hit the bonus in quite the same way because he's not on the ball quite as much. And if he loses half of his penalty share or even all of it, then I think that's why he ends up dropping down a little bit. But I think, again, that's kind of one where the error bars are still a little bit. He's been, there for a while. He's also had a long-term injury from last season. So is he going to come back and be exactly the same player he was? Is he going to... How's this new Arsenal going to look? I know they've got Zubamendi now to push Rice a bit further forward. How does Saka work with Gyökeres? How does he work without him? How does he work with, I don't know, Madueke if he's starting? All that. So there's still a few question marks on him, but I think, yeah, some of these players you can move up and down. If you're optimistic on Saka and you push him up a little bit, he still tends not to really come in because he's only a little bit better than Bruno in that scenario, and he's worse than Palmer, and that's an optimistic view. So I think often, as you said with Bruno Fernandes, what I'll do is, if I'm playing for FPL, is like, if I'm pessimistic on Bruno and I bring his numbers down, one of the things about him moving him further back into centre mid is he's going to make more tackles. So he's not indestructible. I feel like almost like, where am I going to put him that gets him no fantasy points, and he just gets them everywhere from some manner or another. But as you said, he drops down into a position where he's still a very, very good pick. So I don't need to spend as much time assessing whether I think Bruno's going to be playing at centre mid or further forward, because it kind of changes whether he's really good in my team or good in my team. Whereas some other things will have a big impact. So further down, we've got Tielemans down here. We'll talk about him in a bit in the cheaper mid scenario, who we've given sort of a slightly less than 50% penalty share with Watkins. Asensio has been linked. Might take them off him. Might not need to decide. But you can test what happens if Tielemans has no penalties. And is he still a good pick then? And I was finding that for interacting with all my other beliefs, he was still popping up quite a bit. So actually, he's still a good pick. And the bonus is that he has penalties, rather than the penalties make him a good pick. Whereas we see Mateta's come up quite high now. Mateta was someone I probably wasn't looking at too much, but then took 2 penalties in the Community Shield, scored them both as they missed his, and suddenly he's a little bit higher because our belief is that he probably will take most of the penalties. So suddenly, if I'd tested before and seen, okay, Mateta's penalties makes him good, not penalties means he drops out of my team, I need to monitor that and be ready for that. But if it turned out that Mateta with penalties was just not someone in the team anyway, maybe there were more available forwards, there's not really many at the minute, so that's probably why he pops out, then I don't need to worry about that too much. I can start looking at making the assessments that are going to make an impact on who's in my team and who's not in my team. So I think that's why I haven't done as much deep thinking on whether Bruno is going to be this attacking mid or this centre mid, because I know that
I hear you.
a defensive contribution centre mid, penalty taking Bruno Fernandes is still someone I'm probably going to want. But yeah.
You see, there's going to be 50%, and these are rough numbers, of people who don't care about the Bruno discussion because they will be in, and the other 50 will not care because
I'm not trying to be dismissive. But
so
I know.
No,
and some people, even with all these numbers, will just say, I don't want to pick him. And there's an element of he's frustrating to watch as a fantasy owner, even if he does end up getting all the points. I think that, Darwin Nunez was an example of that. Very frustrating own, but he scored quite a lot. He just could have scored a lot more. Whereas sometimes the one who's scoring all their chances is more satisfying. But
Right. I think the last discussion on this topic, because we will have a forward slide as well, is Wirtz versus Watkins. I think that's a really, everyone is debating, once you have the Salah, Palmer, Bruno structure, then you can only get one of Watkins or Wirtz. And some people like me who are greedy try to get both. And so the question is, what is making Wirtz so much better than Watkins as a pick? Especially because Watkins has a little bit of pen share, I would say, 30 to 50%.
Yeah, he's a bit over 50. I think, Wirtz is involved in this Liverpool's attack. It's going to be getting more points. I know he's not quite a Mo Salah. Whereas Watkins, I think Villa are still looking for new players. I know they've got Marlon and they've brought Gesson in, and Rodgers has had a small knock, but he's probably fine. So I wonder if he just doesn't do as much on the bonus. This is probably where I should be opening the planner, and I can click in and I can tinker and see how much bonus he's actually getting, whether that's what affecting it. I'm not as optimistic on Watkins' minutes being as secure as they are as well, I think. Whereas I don't really see how they play without Wirtz having spent so much money on him. Such a young player, whereas Watkins might start getting rested slightly. But again, the points difference here isn't enormous. Like, it's half a point a game, and I think Liverpool's fixtures from the off are all very strong. I know Villa's are pretty good too, but I'm not sure if I can think of anything specific that's really pointing in that direction. I don't know if there's anything.
So I'm looking at the website now, or our projections, and on the assists, Wirtz is the highest player in the game over 12 weeks.
Yes.
For total number of assists, so 4.5 over 12 weeks. So it's the creativity which will bring the bonus. I mean, he's higher than Palmer, he's higher than Bruno in terms of his expected assists or assists per 90. Their bonus is actually very similar. Interestingly, Wirtz almost hit the CBIT threshold in the Crystal Palace game. Now, I don't know if that continues or it was just one game. Yeah, he reached 10. So So I think as a midfielder, clean sheet points also matter as well. So I think that's where the discussion is here. There is not an easy answer. One of them goes outscore
to get all the points, and I think there's been a slight nerf on some of the bonus points for forwards as well. I think last year they were quite very strong, whereas like for the penalties they're not getting as much bonus for it. But yeah, I think it's almost more of a structural thing. Like, do I want to have my money in a forward, or do I want to have my money in a midfielder, as much as it is, do I want Wirtz or do I want Watkins? I think also like the error bars on Wirtz are going to be much higher here. So like it might be that he is much better than Watkins, but he's more likely to be moving. I mean, he's not going to overtake Salah or drop below Enzo Fernandez, I'd assume, but he's more likely to have some noisier projections as things adapt and things change, whereas maybe someone like Watkins, who's been in the league for a while and his role is fairly assumed, Wirtz could he could be playing number 9 at some points. We don't really know exactly where it's going to be. So there's positional assumptions in there. We've got him down pretty much as a, this attacking mid with a small chance of a winger and a very small chance of number 9. But as more and more info we get on him, we'll be updating these, and yeah, maybe in a few weeks' time he'll be a little bit closer to Watkins, but he also might be closer to Bruno and Saka. So I think he's certainly one to watch and monitor, but exciting new player. So maybe he's a shiny new toy. I'm sure that's not in the projections, but he's a reason why people might pick him. Yeah.
Well, market odds don't have the shiny new toy bias, so we'll trust the market odds a little bit more. Okay, let's go to the next table.
We've got the top 20 defenders here, so all prices, top 12 game weeks. Arsenal defenders still at the top. They start off a bit slower. I know they've got some tough games early on. You can see that in game weeks 1, 3, 5 and 6 they're a little bit lower, but 7 onwards is really where they pick up a lot of their expected value. So probably not ones to start with potentially, unless you're really looking long term. Try not to book in a transfer, but yeah, I mean game week 2 and 4 they've got strong numbers. So if you were free hitting in game week 3, or maybe you were wild carding early, then might be ones to look at. But yeah, I think it's probably unsurprising that Arsenal's defence is still topping the charts, even though the DEFCON points have moved. A lot of players way high up. Tarkowski in 4th, Murillo in 5th, Lacroix in 6th, with all these defensive contribution points. They were the top ones on the table that FPL were posting last season. But they do also play for relatively strong defences. They're not elite defences, but considering there's this kind of clump of teams around mid-table in terms of like defensive ability. So Everton's and Forest's opening fixtures are pretty good. I think they possibly are. I'm glad they priced at 5.5. I think if they'd left the pricing as they would have done without defensive contributions, then Tarkowski or Murillo at 5 or even 4.5 would be probably too good. But yeah, is anyone standing out here? Because Munoz a bit further down than we might have thought.
I mean, Lacroix more than Munoz is always interesting to see as a delta. I mean, I'm looking possibly to double up in the future once their good fixture comes. They have home to Sunderland. You can see that big bump in game week 4 when that happens. So there is a route where you can start with a Spurs defender, navigate, and then I know it's booking a transfer, but I think that looks good. With defenders, my perception has changed this season, where I had thought in game week 1 that I'm going to pick 5 centre backs and not touch my defenders for the rest of the season or until wildcard 1. But I think now, given how the landscape is, and if I'm not starting with a Van Dijk, Gabriel, or Saliba, I just feel uncomfortable saying I'll have Murillo until the wildcard window, especially if you have a long-term wildcard planned, which is maybe game week 13 or something. I'm not comfortable, because if you look at Murillo, a lot of his expected points are coming in the first 6 game weeks. After that, it's a lot of difficult fixtures. Gabriel is the opposite. So therefore, it's a very natural, start with Nottingham Forest, move them to a Arsenal defender by game week 7 kind of switch. Similarly with Porro, you can start with a Porro or a Spurs defender and then move them to a Munoz or a Lacroix. So I have become a little bit more open to using my transfers for defenders, whereas when the game launched, I had the exact opposite perception. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I think we often end up making defensive transfers and realizing how many we've made and lamenting the fact that that's where all the resources went. But I think there's the gains to be made aren't always as huge, and it's certainly flattened that a little bit in terms of we can see someone like Lacroix compared to Munoz. They're actually on 3.98 and 3.93, so very similar. Obviously, Branthwaite's in between them. But if you look at game week 4, then Munoz is at 5.5 and Lacroix is at 5. So Munoz has got an extra half an EV there. But then if you go to game week 9, probably their toughest fixture, I can't remember who they're playing, Munoz 2.7, Lacroix 3.2. So it's half an EV flipped the other way. So you can see on this source of points, these sort of big beefy centre-backs who hoof the ball away. It's definitely flattens there. This sort of dampens the difference between a difficult and a harder fixture. So there are still these moves to be made. Porro to Munoz is, a lot of their expected value is coming from their attacking threat and their bonus points and things like that. Whereas someone like a Murillo and a Lacroix, it's a little bit flatter. So I think you can still move around. You can still see that obviously there's gains to be made from targeting the better fixtures. It's not like it's so flat that it's like, well, if it's an easy game, he gets a clean sheet, and if it's a hard game, he gets the defensive contributions. Like, you still need to move them around. They're not weighted the same. But I think there are more of these guys like your Joachim Andersen or an Agbadu a bit further down, who at 4.5 you can just leave there for a while and kind of really rely on them if something goes wrong for the forward and I need to play them for a game when I hadn't planned to. Actually, like, you know, they're still putting up 3.5 EV in some of these like mid-tier level games. So it'd only really be if they've got like a really tough fixture that I wouldn't feel like I can, okay, well, I need to play him when I didn't need to, but that lets me roll a transfer to then make a double move to get a better captaincy option. I'm more happy playing someone like that in an okay fixture, because I know that the contributions might come there. But yeah, these attacking guys, I know we've lost Trent, obviously, and it's not going to be the same, and Frimpong is probably not as nailed for minutes. He's not even on here if he sort of got a bit of a shared minutes once Bradley's back. So I think those guys, yeah, Porro to Munoz is one that a lot of people might be looking at. Porro's EV in Gameweek 1 is very high. So it's not so good after that, but you can totally see why you start with him and move to Munoz after a week or 3. I think, but yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I mean, the defensive contribution points have been harder to model for us than anything else, because it's new, but a lot of the data is not market inferred. Exactly, that people don't bet on tackles in quite the same way that they bet on goals. So I think everyone's kind of still finding their feet with it in the modeling space. So I'm not expecting it to, like, you know, these are all going to be all wrong or all our assumptions are way off, but they're probably, you know, error bars a bit wider, another way to talk about it. So we might find that some of these defenses start playing in a very different way and the team style changes and suddenly they're not picking those contributions up in the same way.
Yeah, no, I hear you, and this is what people need to keep in mind. Like Agbadu, somebody like him, or Richards show up really high here. It could just be that, you know, the manager changes this year. There's been, for example, Gayhe's leaving, so does Richards' role changes with that? With Agbadu, you know, there's been, you know, it's a new fresh start at the beginning of the season, so we need to be a little bit wary. Sometimes they hit those thresholds and they end up with, there's a little bit of variance as well in hitting those thresholds, right? Some players could end up with 10 or 11 and they haven't hit the threshold. So I think you have to take it on the chin. But I think the summary here is that the gap between a really good defender and a 4.4 defender that has attacking threat, clean sheet odds, and CBIT, which I don't think, apart from Van Dijk, in a small way, we have in anyone particularly.
Yeah, I think he's the only one of the sort of, like, you know, Gvardiol and Gabriel Saliba aren't really hitting these numbers, and Virgil seems to be the only one who's actually making enough clearances to be hitting it a little bit. But as we said before, maybe Liverpool's defence isn't quite as strong as it was before. Still some changing parts. You know, Gravenberch maybe missing in that defensive midfield role in a few games. We'll see, but yeah, I'm sure this will change quite a lot as the season goes on. I'm sure it's kind of just it's almost to pick your poison and hope for the best.
So one other thing before we move to the next table is Estev from Burnley. I mean, he's an absolute monster in terms of the projections. Of course, this is projections, and the error bars are even higher because this is a guy who wasn't playing in the Premier League last year. But if I look at the Solio projections, he's over 50% every single week. He's hitting almost 80% in some of the weeks. Now, we will not play him in those fixtures. So if you do go for a structure with him, I think just be prepared for a lot of 3-4 pointers if he does turn out to be that CBIT beast that the model is predicting him to be.
Yeah, I think it's possibly not unexpected that the reason he's getting all these contribution points is because teams are going to be dominating Burnley. So that's probably not going to result in many clean sheets. But if they keep a random clean sheet in a tough game, that's going to be a clean sheet and the defensive contributions, and you're going to have a frustrating 8 or 10 pointer even on the bench. But I think, we're just going to have to get used to that. It's probably not one that you want to go, okay, well, I'll play him against Arsenal away then. Just one that, you know, there's a hole. There's an even bigger hole there rather than these rogue Southampton against Man City 0-0s that there was last season. But yeah, up next we've got the midfielders under 7 million. So we've gone for the budget ones because most of the top ones appear in the overall chart. And I was gonna say a fan favorite of mine is up at the top with Yuri Tielemans leading the charge. He has got a sort of 40 to 50% penalty share baked in here, which you might think is even higher, but you might think it's even lower. So that does fluctuate him a little bit. But yeah, I think these are the names that a lot of people have been talking about in terms of either these attacking guys who are still quite kindly priced, like a Sar and a Semenyo, or some of these like double threat players like a Illiman and Di and a Tielemans and a Paquetá and those kind of players. So it's quite a mix, but all quite closely bunched as well. I mean, 4.3 on average to 3.6, 3.7 down the bottom end for some of these guys like Adamsgaard. Anything you think sticks out to you here?
Well, I think this who's the Wolves guy, John Arias, if that's how we pronounce it. He's higher than Anderson, so I think Anderson has been the popular 5.5 darling. Just to say that the Solio model is bullish on the Wolves attacker as well, and I would say Tielemans is very much dependent on your beliefs on penalty share. I mean, if they do sign Asensio, maybe that will take a little bit of a hit because Asensio was at least what Emery said was the penalty taker. He then missed 2 penalties, so does that mean he's still on them or not? TBD, but maybe he takes a little bit of hit there. But apart from that, I don't think there's anything very surprising. Indai should not really take a hit from the Grealish signing, even though they play in similar positions. I think one will just play centrally or on the other flank. I think, speaking to Everton fans, both should be pretty good. And of course, my darling Dewsbury Hall isn't in here because he is still an unknown, right? I mean, where he'll play, whether he'll play in the 8 or the 10, his minutes. He's obviously a new signing, so it's a little bit of unknown. But I've used the model. I've updated my beliefs a little bit based on the corner that he took and the fact that McNeil may not make the starting 11 as frequently. So therefore, the set piece share for Dewsbury Hall looks all right or looks better. So I'm using it as if he plays in the 8, then maybe he can accumulate a couple of defensive contribution points. Sometimes he can get an assist off a corner. For 5 million, I think that was a very appealing price. That I think that was also something to talk about. And of course, he'll come in my draft, so I should give a pre-warning.
Yeah, I think on Arias versus Anderson, I think like this does kind of show like a slight. Anderson is one who I think his corner share is something that's going to be quite important in the same way that the Dewsbury Halls is for Everton if he's taking them. But I think also his minutes, not just minutes in terms of starting, but minutes in terms of minutes during the game, are going to be quite impactful because he was hitting near enough 50% defensive contribution rate last season. But he towards the end of the season he was playing 90 minutes most games, and actually because it's a threshold point scoring system rather than like a linear, it's you're getting shots and any of them could go in as a goal. Like you're as likely to score your goal in the first 10 minutes as the last 10. Not exactly, but it's not hugely dissimilar. Whereas for these midfielders to be hitting these defensive contributions, they do probably need to be playing the full 90 to give themselves a good chance. Some people can kind of do it in a 60-70 minute spell, but if Anderson starts making a few more of these sort of 65-70 minute subs, then his defensive contribution points are actually going to come down a lot more than his assists and his goals are, which obviously do decrease a little bit if he's playing less, but not as much. So actually, because it's this non-linear relationship between the two, then that's one to monitor as well in terms of whether we think he's definitely going to be playing 90. I know that Forest are also, I think they're looking at James McAtee, who might be signing, and I'm sure I might have been Flapjack, who I'll shout out, was talking about England under 21 corner taking, which is the level of detail that sometimes people will go and look into. But I'm pretty sure McAtee and I think it was Alex Scott were both taking corners over Anderson there. Obviously Alex Scott's at Bournemouth, so not as relevant, but he's not. His corner share's probably gone up from Elanga leaving, but if McAtee joins, he might take them. Don't know for sure. Anderson, he's like the likely taker at the moment, but the set pieces offer a lot of value, but it's also something you can sort of suddenly lose And actually, if he's getting further forward and playing as more of a box to box 8 than a D8, he loses his tackling in the same way. So he is one that feels more, steady in terms of his point stream, but actually I worry slightly that some of his point streams are maybe a bit fragile to some movement. So he's still one I'm definitely looking at, and at 5.5 is very strong. But yeah, if you're looking longer term, then Arias might be the pick. Given that Wolves' fixtures from game week sort of 5 to 9 are looking pretty strong. But again, you can find your own players further down the list and boost them and find out that Dewsbury Hall is actually the one you want. But I think even without penalties, for me, it's probably going to be Yuri Tielemans. He's holds a special place in my heart. So.
And then that's always a good FPL rationale. I mean, what about Reinders? He's been popular in the community after scoring a brace in preseason, like it usually happens. Your thoughts there, both in terms of how it's been modelled as well as a pick?
Yeah, so I think again, like he's not going to be hitting defensive contributions. I think that was something that was highlighted when he signed. Was actually Man City have been signing a lot of players who don't do a lot of this defensive work further forward, and that's might be why they sort of struggle with that rest defense or the sort of transitional play. So I think it's if he can play like that Gundogan of old that we used to know, arriving in the box repeatedly, and at 5.5 he kind of only really needs to be playing and not as a defensive midfielder in a Man City team to be working. So it's the minutes I'd be looking for, and I just don't think I can be sure enough that he's going to be playing good minutes in enough of the games to warrant going for him over someone who I'd be more sure of with an Anderson or an Arias. But he's certainly exciting, and if you get the minutes, then you're laughing, you're winning. But I think if he doesn't get the minutes, he can start to drop in price and he becomes an issue and you have to move him on, rather than, oh, he's not performing quite like I needed him to and I just haven't got as many points. He can hamper you in other ways if he's not performing or he's not getting the minutes and people start to hop off him. So it's probably a more volatile asset, but that might be what you want. You might be chasing this higher upside. So yeah, I wouldn't put anyone off him specifically. I think I'm probably too cautious on trying to think what strategy am I trying to follow to kind of be flexible to making moves or having transfers free to do things that I decide in a few weeks' time, rather than trying to put that strategy into my Game Week 1 team, so to speak. I think I'd almost rather pick a kind of boring Game Week 1 team and make some funky transfers than I would pick a funky Game Week 1 team and have to make transfers because it didn't work. Or have to wildcard early because it didn't work, and I lose those powerful tools later on. Is the way I'd play it. But yeah, I think he's good, and 5.5 is not something to be sniffed at for a Man City attacking midfielder if he's playing those minutes.
Yeah, no, I hear you, my playstyle is very similar. Like, even if you miss the boat and he gets to 5.9 and you've missed a couple of attacking returns, there's always time to get him later. Like, it's not like you will lose out so much that other people have got a 0.4 million team value advantage or whatever. I think we play it up a lot more in our heads that you'll miss the bandwagon or whatever. For cheap picks, I think there's always time to jump on them if you genuinely think they're good picks for the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else stand out here?
Next one is I think not really. We talked about Rutter already. Rogers is decent, but I expected maybe him to be higher. But I think with Asensio, he suffers anyway. So with the Asensio links, that's enough for me to put, to put me off, because I like him playing central. I know this is getting into non-analytic stuff, but maybe that goes into our beliefs on his goal share.
Positional stuff is very important for his goal share. Yeah, if he's out further wide, his potency for goals and assists changes. So I think that's it's not like it's not accounted for. I think that's something that sometimes is thought not to be in the models, but yeah, we're doing positional share. I'll shout out RobT for his work on that.
So that's where I am. I mean, those are the popular picks. I think Sarr is already there. He's rightly up as a really good pick. Of course, there has been some work behind the scenes that JC has changed in the numbers to get Tielemans number one, but we will see where that changes once Asensio joins or if Asensio joins. But yeah, no, I think nothing else. I think we just have one more slide on strikers, right?
Yes, we do. We've got the forwards.
Yes.
Number one, Haaland. Surprise, surprise. A whole point and nearly a point and a half ahead of Gyökeres and Ekitike, who've been slowly creeping up with their good preseason minutes. We've been a bit more assured that they probably will be starting the season Gameweek 1 and holding that spot. Whereas I think earlier on in the season they probably weren't as viable. Well, I mean, they only need to be viable picks on Friday, don't they? It doesn't really matter where they were a few weeks ago, but probably a bit less talked about, a bit lower in the models when we were. Are they going to start straight from the off? Are they going to come in a few games' time? I suppose Ekitike's still got some, is he going to be the actual number 9? Is he going to sign? But yeah, those two and Watkins are both up at the top. But then, yeah, we've seen Mateta jump up to 5th here with his potential penalty share ahead of Bowen. Solanke's up there. We have got Solanke on reduced minutes in Game Week 1. So I think you said if he were assumed fully fit for Game Week 1, then he'd be up above Bowen and Mateta. Is that right? Or close?
Almost the same as Mateta. Almost
Quite
identical
similar
to Mateta.
Yeah, I mean it's only 1 week, but actually, yeah, I think the issue is like Solanke's opening fixture is so good that it does feel a shame to miss out on him and jump on him later. I think if it was Man City first, then Burnley second, I think everyone would just go, well, I won't have him, and if he plays Burnley, I'll buy him. But because it's that way around, then sorry, Man City. Yeah. So probably not one to start with unless you're sure.
If he plays PSG on Wednesday, starts, plays 55 minutes, would that tempt you?
I think it would, because there's so few forwards that I want to pick. So almost at the expense of the fact that I don't really like any of the other ones, rather than that normally in and of himself making him a very good pick. But I think unless Mateta moves to Newcastle, as has been potentially linked today, just to take another striker away from our options, then I think I'm quite happy with someone like that, or a Bowen that I'm just a bit more sure of to start with. I think picking these kind of mins, doubts, risks just opens. If you pick too many of them and they all go wrong, you're really exposed to needing a wild card early and sort of disrupting your whole strategy. So yes, very tempting, but I think even if he played 90 and said I feel amazing, I've taken some steroids and I feel great, I'd probably just, well, it seems unlikely. Not gonna be. I don't think there's anything that's gonna happen that's gonna make me sure he's gonna start Game Week 1 and be fully fit, basically.
I mean, as someone on free hit 6 strategy, I'm secretly hoping he's not ready, because if you start with Solanke, then free hit 6 becomes worse because he plays Brighton at home. But if I can not start with him and then have him for Game Week 6, then that's kind of nice. So I'm also of the camp that maybe it's not ready yet. But I think long-term prospects, he's looking good, especially his pen share should be up there. So as you can see, I mean, this has got obviously the strikers from the good teams, and Ekitike has the widest error bars here because it'll depend on what happens with Isak. Gyökeres has wide error bars because of minutes and penalties. So it's really, people are down to Haaland or Watkins or Mateta, Bowen, João Pedro, Strand Larsen. I think these are the choices.
Yeah, Šeško's just signed and might be there. Thiago looked really good for a brief period where we thought he was fine, and then the people realised that actually he didn't play any of last season, and I don't know if he's any good, and he might not be taking penalties, and he might not be the striker because they've linked someone, and I can't quite bring myself to put Fulkrug in my team, and then you're down to Pirro and Mayenda, who might be getting replaced. Maybe Mayenda took his penalty in pre-season and missed a couple last year, I think. So yeah, Raul and Muniz, we've just got, I don't know which one's going to start. So you get, Welbeck looked an option at one point, but might not be playing at the start, and Rutter can play 9, and just none of these guys look very good. Sadly, it's probably why I'll end up putting a lot of money into midfield and defence. But Strand Larsen, I think, is the one that.
I mean, let's talk João Pedro. Sorry, I guess we can talk both. João Pedro and Strand Larsen are kind of the analytics versus non-analytics picks. So João Pedro, very popular. In fact, he's higher owned then Salah at the moment, and Strand Larsen nobody owns. Apart from if you go to the Discord server where everyone owns the Solio Discord server and the Analytics Discord server. So there's a little bit of discrepancy there. They're bang on next 12 weeks, almost the same amount of points. Obviously, João Pedro is a million more. Is it completely no go for you to start with João Pedro and then move to a Solanke, or what's the reason?
I think I'm just not fully sure he's gonna keep playing all the minutes. Like I'm pretty confident from off the start, but compared to what he was doing at Brighton, where he'd miss games here and there, but was the penalty taker, and he's lost those at Chelsea now. I think he's had a very good pre-season and had a big impact straight away at the Club World Cup right at the end, and Chelsea ended up beating PSG in that final game. But the games before that, I think, weren't particularly taxing opposition. No disrespect to those teams, but they weren't playing like Champions League level teams. And pre-season's just training to me. I think, like, if someone says he scored 5 goals in pre-season, it's almost the same as saying he scored 5 goals in the training match. Or it's not the same, but like it's much closer.
It helps minutes slightly.
Yeah, I want to know who's playing, but I think if you scored 2 goals against, I don't know, Colchester, in a pre-season, like, they're using the games to try things out and get the players ready, then using them to win or not. There's been analysis done on, well, maybe not players specifically, but certainly teams, like teams pre-season form in terms of results and correlation with the start of the season. And there's virtually no correlation at all. Like, teams will have bad pre-season results and play well off the start. Teams will have good pre-season results and start poorly. So it's not like the results in and of themselves are enough to make me go, okay, João Pedro's been scoring, Chelsea look good, want to pick him. I still think he's a good pick. I'm not saying he's, a poor player. It's not like he's a huge minutes risk and is playing for a terrible attack and isn't going to score. But he's just not someone who's really stood out to me. For that extra million as well, I think that I can spend that on better use. And I think, I'd rather start with a Mateta with an eye on that sort of Game Week 4 game in a few Game Weeks time, whereas João Pedro is more likely to become an issue. I'm going to have to move on or move around, or it finds out he's playing the Champions League games and Delap starts playing the Premier League games a bit more, or they've got a big squad. I know they seem to keep adding to it and removing players, and it's hard to know who's on that conveyor belt. But I'm not doubting him as a potential source of points. And I'm still not even ruling him out. I don't think I won't pick him, but it feels like a nice way to go. Okay, everyone's gone for him, and I don't really buy the hype in the same way. I'll for free, almost, for an equal source of points, I can just pick someone different and differentiate myself that way. Is something that slightly appeals in terms of okay, I can bet against what everyone else is thinking. But I mean, he's been an analytics darling, so to speak. Not that we're drawing factions and barriers, but he was one that was people loved at Brighton when he was cheap and on penalties and injured and not playing and disappearing, and Hertzler was saying he was fine and he wasn't, and all that stuff. What about you?
No, I am tempted to start with him over a Mateta. So if I was to pick a 7.5 striker, then at the moment my thinking is just start with João Pedro and then take it from there, because he's highly owned. It's like I don't want to take risk in that position. So it's got to do with your risk appetite. I am happy to take risk with Bruno Fernandes, which I think is not going to be a popular pick, and I'm willing to put money there because I think that's where points will be. But if in a 7.5 slot where I'm not as convinced by Bowen, by Mateta, by João Pedro, by Chris Wood, Ivan Ilson, I say I'm going to hold Solanke's spot there. When Solanke is ready, he's going to become that. And if João Pedro doesn't work out, then 60% other people playing FPL will have the same problem. So I can see if people wanted to go with that strategy as well. So I don't want to completely dismiss it, because there is some upside here as well. So, but I get it. I get why there is an element of free risk that you avoid him and you try to capture the same expected points by other people. And Strand Larson is a good example where you can see here that if you were to believe these projections, then he's pretty good.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just João Pedro's not really come up as someone I've really considered too much, just in the way I've been thinking and running solves and simulations. But yeah, nothing against him. Just doesn't seem to be one I'm super interested in. I think also you talk about like owning Bruno for having a player
Right.
that not many people have. Obviously that is kind of the same as not owning a player lots of other people do have, but it kind of feels different in terms of the way you're reacting to things and managing them, and actually like being able to watch a guy that not many people have versus trying to hide from someone that everyone else has is a different sort of mentality, even if actually from a points leverage, ownership, exposure perspective is very similar. So yeah, I think we're more inclined to be finding these differentials for our own teams than we are to be fading highly owned players. But it's the same way, it's the same sort of thing.
Two drafts. It's. I think we've been quite comprehensive talking about all the projections. Just so that if you're listening, we're not going to be this long every podcast. It's just that we've got a lot of topics, a lot of things to discuss pre-game week 1. After game week 1, it's going to narrow down into what the popular picks are and if there's injuries and things like that. So
yeah,
this is my draft. It is by seeing who the fifth midfielder is. Obviously, I have some Dewsbury Hall propaganda, and my friend Jonny has some Tielemans propaganda. But other than that, it's not too different. I think the idea is that the way I've set up my draft is there's 5 people who I think I really want, and I think these are good picks that will have good expected points over the next 12 weeks if I hold on to them, which is Palmer, Salah, Bruno Fernandes, Florian Wirtz, and Ollie Watkins. These are the 5 guys I want to solve for. A lot of people have got 4 out of these 5. So my differentiation, I suppose, is that I have the 5th. Now, some people will have Watkins, not Wirtz. Some people won't have Bruno. I'll have all 5. What am I sacrificing by going for all these 5? Is probably not having a João Pedro. I'll have Strand Larson as my second striker. It's probably not having an Anderson or a more expensive 5th midfielder. So I'm shaving 0.5 off there. And then maybe I'm shaving off one defender. So I think I can see, for example, a Murillo being very popular. So I've basically become a little bit cheaper and I've gone for Nico Williams. Why am I okay with a Nico Williams? Because I don't want that slot for very long. I'm going to be free hitting in game week 6. I will get those elite defenders for home to Sunderland. And so for that period in which they have slightly okay fixtures, not the best, I think he's still okay for defensive contributions. I'm not losing too many expected points to a Murillo. So I'm saving 0.5 there. And I think that's about it in terms of my saving. Maybe you can argue that the Dorgu slot, the second sub, could be another expensive, Lacroix or somebody else. But so I've taken 0.5 from the 5th mid, 0.5 from my Nottingham Forest player, 0.5 from a 4th defender, and I've converted a 7.5 striker into a Ollie Watkins. That's essentially my thinking in terms of how I've gone about it. Am I losing some points over a 12-week horizon? I am losing a little bit. So if I put in the team that Solio tries to give me, which is basically a better 5th mid, a little bit better defense, and not an Ollie Watkins, but a 7.5 like Mateta, I lose about 6 EV over 12 weeks. And you know what? In my mind, I'm okay with that. I'm not solving for optimal. I'm solving for what I think is right in the first few weeks. And I think this team gets me there with no transfers needed in the first 3-4 weeks, except for a Porro to a Munoz, because I think there is upside there of going for Porro in game week 1 and then moving to a Munoz either in game week 2 if I'm looking to bench boost, or to Porro in game week 4 if I'm not looking to bench boost, because if I'm not bench boosting, Porro can sit on the bench in game week 2. High level thoughts. That's at least my draft. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I'll just run through it very quickly in case anyone's listening. I think you said all the players anyway, but yeah, Sanchez, Williams, Porro, Anderson, Palmer, Salah, Bruno, Wirtz, Dewsbury Hall, Watkins, Strand Larson, Dubravka, Mark, Gui, Dorgu, and Esteve. So yeah, I think there's been quite a bit of discussion in our Discord server about booking in these potential game week 2 or game week 3 moves, because I think Porro to Munoz is one that has a lot of value in terms of like the amount you can gain. But I think would you be happy to to take a hit in game week 2 to do that move if it turned out that, I don't know, Palmer gets injured and you need to move him on as well? Or are you gonna? Do you have a backup plan? Do you have an early wild card in mind as a sort of get out of jail free if you get a few issues and you're not able to make these kind of moves, or what do you think you would do there?
So there's only two main moves that I've planned, which is
Mhm.
Poro to Munoz, which doesn't need to happen in game week 2. So if Palmer is injured, Poro stays. I mean, it's Poro. It's not like, he will still have good expected points. And the second one is moving the Nottingham Forest defender to a Gabriel by game week 7. So if by game week 7 things are really looking bad, then early wildcard is that bailout, because game week 7, 8 is a nice wildcard window as well. So I think it's only in this situation where I'm booking in a transfer where we have a scenario where Dubravka magically appears in game week 1, or he's fit and he starts. And so therefore I think his likelihood of starting in game week 2 is high. If who's my other guy, Gui, is also, he gets a 30-minute appearance off the bench and he scores a goal. Or so essentially, if I feel that both Dubravka and Gui are likely to start game week 2, then bench boost is on, because all these other players have decent enough games in game week 2, except for Poro, who's away to Man City. So therefore only in that scenario I'd be looking to do Poro to Munoz, in game week 2, and then hit the bench boost button and get that out of the way.
Right.
If this is not the case, and this is the more likely scenario in my node or in my branch, which is essentially that, this guy is not ready, Dubravka is not ready, or Gui is not ready, then I'm not making a transfer in game week 2. Then I'm leaving it till game week 4, making no transfers. And then in game week 4 is when I move Poro onto Munoz or do anything else. I can even move Nico Williams off to Munoz if I can create funds, if there's a double move I can afford.
Yeah, so you've got that cover with. I think this is where Estev comes in a lot. Is he's got that very nice game week 2 fixture, home to Sunderland, and it seems to be the only game week we might end up actually playing him. But that lets you pick Poro, and then bench him in game week 2 when you've got that Man City game. Yeah, so I think a lot of the players are very similar here. Like I've got 4 of those 5, as you said. I've just spread the funds out a little bit more. So I think. Yeah, I think it's a straight. Is Mark Gui the one that you want definitely, or do you think you might end up going? We wanted a 4.5 dead spot and none of them were available, and we just picked the guy with the funniest name. Is he the one that you think you'll go for in terms of mins, or?
Yeah, I think so, because there's a couple of reasons. One, he is likeliest to get a starting role, whether that's every game or not, but he's likeliest to do that. And that dovetails very well with my strategy, where I definitely want to bench boost before my wildcard. I don't want to carry. We're already seeing we're struggling for forwards. Now, this may change if Gyökeres smashes it, Isak smashes it. But as we know, the information we know now is that in my wildcard 1, I want to have Haaland, and that's it. Like, that could be a strategy I go for in wildcard 13. So I don't want to worry about the bench boost. So therefore, the moment Gui looks like a starter and Dubravka becomes a starter, every week is a potential bench boost.
Yeah.
That's how I'll be thinking about it. And I'm going with the guys who are most likeliest to become that without using a transfer.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And then I suppose if you need to try and move the funds around, you can always sell one of these 5 guys to like free up some funds to move GUI up in order to bench boost and then wildcard back into whatever premium structure you need to.
Correct.
So yeah, you've got 5 cash cows in case of emergency, just in the same way.
No, Bruno can never be sold. So I've got 4 cash cows.
Nice. 4 cash cows. Salah's going, is he, before Bruno?
You never know. Game week 7.
Yeah, indeed. And then Dorgu, I think, is a popular one that I've not really looked at too much on the bench. Is he the 4.5 you want? Does he cover the rotations, or is he just kind of another Man United player?
He covers game week 3 for Anderson, where Dorgu has an amazing fixture, where Bruno, we were talking about being
Burnley at home, of course.
So he fits in a good rotation, but I do have concerns that he doesn't start every single game. So another guy I've looked at is Richards. Richards has good DEFCON 4.5. I'm a little bit scared about this Gehi move, but I'm confident that Palace will still continue to be Palace.
Yeah.
Gehi,
I'm sure they can replace him.
He's not going to impact them as much. Of course, there should be an impact. So it's going to be Richards more likely than Dorgu. But yeah, that's a spot that I am debating.
Okay, nice. And then, is there anything hugely different you were considering, or is it more these kind of fringe players around the edge?
I mean, I could consider a Watkins downgrade. So if Asensio joins and the pen share for Watkins goes from point 0.3, point 0.4 to 0, then I could think about a Watkins down to somebody cheaper. So this is why I'm interested in a Solanke, a João Pedro, a Mateta, and using that 1.5 million, and then I can then get Dewsbury Hall up to somebody more sensible. Maybe that's an Anderson, maybe that's a Tielemans. It could be Reinders. So I could use that money and then, of course, put it in defense. You can never put too much money in defense. I'm using defense as the balance sheet solver in terms of how that's the solving item, but it shouldn't be like that. Defense has enough potential. But at least for now, that's the approach I'm taking.
Yeah, I think it's pretty strong. I think I was going to say, I'll tell you exactly what I'd change from it by showing you my team, which is very similar. Obviously, I'll read it out again. I've got Vicario at the minute. Not as sure about that one. I know Sir Talp, who's had a lot of issues with Vicario last season, got very frustrated with him. Talks in our Discord server about, I need to ban him, can't have him. I've got Murillo, Tarkowski, Goodmanson from Leeds, Palmer, Salah, Bruno, Wirtz, the classic, and Tielemans, my favourite. I've got Mateta over Watkins and Strand Larsen, and then a similar defence: Dubravka, Anderson, Agbadu, and Mark Guyu. Mark, I guess we'll call him. I'm sure he'll release how to say it at some point. Probably has done already, and we're being ignorant. But yeah, so again, the tweaks aren't too much. I think it's just Watkins down to Mateta, Dewsbury Hall up to Tielemans, and move the funds around a little bit at the back. I've gone Vicario over Porro. I think I'm less sure now with Dubravka not potentially being available. Excuse me for
because you're going to do the same rotation, right?
Yeah, so the Burnley Spurs rotation. When I say rotation, it's purely game week 2. Everything else is Spurs. But works really well for the goalkeepers. So I think Vicario was one I was looking at over Bob Sanchez. But I think Sanchez might be the one who comes back in. And then instead of Porro, I've got my big beefy 4 centre backs that we were talking about before who hoof the ball away. Got Murillo, Tarkowski, Anderson, and Agbadu. I think Agbadu especially is one I'm quite keen on for maybe the longer term. So if I want to try and hold the wild card a bit later, their fixtures are quite nice after the opening few.
And he rotates really well with Gabriel. If you start with him. When Gabriel plays Man City and Liverpool, I think he plays Leeds and somebody else. So actually, that's a nice rotation.
So I might end up doing Murillo down to Williams and Tarkowski up to Gabriel or those kind of changes. But I think this structure is probably something that a lot of people are ending up on, but I think is one I probably will end up on. I do have half a mind to just drop Mateta down to Eli Krupi Jr. from Bournemouth or whoever's name I think is the best, and bring that defence up even further. So Goodmanson, would then be able to go up to a Gabriel and I'd have him as well, or a Virgil. And then I could even move, Anderson up to Lacroix and have, 5 big centre backs across the whole back line. But I just worry slightly that it's a bit bit fragile. If there's an issue with Strand Larsen or an issue with some other players, there's not quite as many places to go. But I think from a point of view of actually spreading out the points, I'd be quite happy with 5-4-1, 4-5-1 a lot of weeks. I guess Tielemans will probably play over most of the defenders, but the value is definitely defence and midfield at the minute. But I was also looking at a way of taking Wirtz out and bringing in like a Paquetá, and put I think that was before Mateta took the pens. I was looking at Ekitike and kind of just swapping. I know Ekitike and Wirtz are quite different players, but a Liverpool attacker feels like you're kind of buying almost the same player. But potential issues with Isak, who has said he doesn't want to play for Newcastle ever again. Sadly for me as a Newcastle fan. So I think that if I was going to drop one, I think I will drop one of those 5 that you have. And I'm not as keen on Watkins as I might be. I think I'd rather go for an Ekitike or a Gyökeres. But I think Wirtz would probably be the one I'd make way. I imagine it's one of the two rather than finding a way to make both work. Just because I think these defenders are pretty strong with Forest and Everton for Murillo and Tarkowski, and I can just put them in for the first 5-6 weeks. And I think I really want to try and roll transfers as much as I can to get into a good spot to, I might decide not to free hit in 6, and I might decide to make that Haaland to Salah switch in 6 and use the transfers there, and potentially even have my wild card free hit and bench boost to use from like game week 12, 13 to game week 19 when there's that kind of fixture switch, and there's also a few things to do. And if I can use my free hit around the AFCON extra transfers, like I can, if I free hit in 14 or 15, then I can almost get like a second free hit around it by using all my transfers up and then having restocked up back up to 5 for game week 16. I think that slightly appeals to me. So I think I'd rather have my free hit a bit later. But again, that's something I'll happily decide come game week 4 or 5 rather than wanting to lock it in now. So I think I just want to have a team that I can forget about for 4 or 5 weeks, fight any real issues and figure it out. Once we've got a bit more info, once the transfer window's closed, and I'll forego a bit of EV and team projections in those opening 3 or 4 weeks, but buy some information and flexibility to then start making funky transfers and doing some weird stuff. But that's where I'm at at the minute.
Nice. And so I like the open chip strategy and just taking it from save transfers and then take it around. In some ways I'm similar, although I'm a little bit more set on free hit 6. But then if I reach game week 4 and I have 4 free transfers, and the landscape looks like it can be tackled. Yeah. So no, I like it. So tune in next week, guys, when we are both saving a transfer. No, I'm just joking. We will have enough to talk about anyway.
How are you rolling? I'll roll, I think. Yeah.
You might have a bench boost. As you can, I might have a bench boost. I might have a transfer to make, and so and anyway, I think
for either of us.
No, I don't think with Dubravka being such a good option and some uncertainty on his minutes, I think that almost kills bench boost one.
Yeah, I think the cheaper options aren't good enough to make the bench good and still have these hitters. I think if you're going to have a good bench boost one, it's with 3 or maybe even 2 of those like 5 that we were looking at, or those price points at least. And I think that's just too big a sacrifice that's going to unravel or need a wild card to come out of, and I don't see enough of an advantage personally. But I think you can play it like that, and you can attack those opening weeks, and it's not a poor strategy. But I think I back myself to find a space for it at some point. Nice. I'm sure I'll rue those words when I get around to it, and I've got 5 injuries, 3 transfers, and a bench boost to use, and I'm in a pickle. But we'll see.
That's what the wild card's for. All right, we'll leave it there.
Yep.
Thank you everybody for tuning in. If you liked what you heard, we've got tremendous support already, so we should start with that. I mean, there was so much love for the content that we put out, so much love for the platform, and so if you do enjoy what you're listening to, do like this video, subscribe to the channel so you can learn when we have new stuff out. We usually do a Tuesday or a Wednesday pod recorded, and as you can see from this video, we'll talk more about projections, about what the model is saying, rather than just talking about our team. So that's how we'll try to keep it. But Jonny, any last words?
No, just see you next week. See you when the season started, and best of luck to everyone.